you're leaving at a time where the House will probably flip Republican anyway. Is that a factor in why you're getting out?
It's way too early to say who's going to be in charge in November. It's not a factor, and it's too early to say who's going to be in control of the House and Senate.
Ever the optimist. Well, that was in January. Unfortunately, it didn't go your way.
Yeah, but it was close. It was very close, and it was not a Republican wave. It turned out to be a Republican ripple, or somebody would say a tinkle. So,
right.
And it was a very close majority now. But, and we retained control of the Senate. Democrats have the Senate, which is good, and the White House.
Right, but everything changes. Yeah. And, well, you're not going to be there for it. You're leaving, so it's up to the next guy to deal with the Republicans in charge. You know what? We're going to talk about everything. We'll take a look back at your career and everything, and we'll reflect on where you might be going, what's your next chapter. But first, listen, we've got some news. And you're still in Congress for the next couple of weeks until things change. And there's a lot of news. Just last night, we're taping on a Friday, we're taping on Thursday, rather. Just last night, President Zelensky from the Ukraine addressed Congress. And here's why I think he came in. Because he knows the Republicans are taking over in January, and he may not get as much cash as he's looking for from them. Has it been right to give him billions, $47 billion coming his way?
It is a very powerful speech that he gave last night. I think it was important that he was able to come to Washington, meet with President Biden, address a joint session of Congress, and he reminded everyone of what we are fighting for, what he is fighting for. The Ukrainian people have really stepped up and are fighting for their country, fighting for democracy. And he said the aid that the United States is giving is not charity. It's an investment in global security and in democracy. So he had a very powerful message, and he came to thank the American people. And he did say thank you for the aid that you're giving to Ukraine, and we need to continue to support Ukraine against this unlawful, unjust war that Russia has thrust upon the Ukrainian people.
It really is more than money. We're fighting a proxy war with Russia, and we're giving him, in addition to billions, $47 billion coming his way, in addition to the $2 billion he picked up just a day ago. We're going to give him the Patriot missile system, which he's been begging for. You know, your colleague Elizabeth Warren, the Democrat from Massachusetts, senator, she said that's a mistake. That really ups the ante in this proxy war. Do you agree with Elizabeth Warren on that? She's against that.
I don't agree with Elizabeth Warren. I think that it's appropriate that we send the Patriot missile system there. I support President Biden's decision to do that, to better protect against incoming Russian missiles. The Patriot missiles is a great interceptor program. And look, there are not U.S. boots on the ground. There are not U.S. warplanes fighting in this war. We are supplying the Ukrainian people with the arms they need to defend themselves and their country, and they're being highly effective against this Russian invasion. Now, Russia, Vladimir Putin, thought that this war was going to be over in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and most people thought that was the way it was going to happen. It didn't turn out that way because of the courage of the Ukrainian people, and backed up by both the arms that the United States and our allies in NATO are providing. Remember, President Biden has been highly effective at rallying the international community, rallying NATO and Western countries to support President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people in this war against Russia and Vladimir Putin in particular.
He's also been pretty effective at rallying his Republican critics who say, listen, you're giving billions and billions to Ukraine, which was a corrupt country before the war. We know the problems they've had with corruption, and there's no accounting. And the Republicans who are taking over in January on your side of the House are saying we need an accounting. This is just money that we're throwing into a black hole. Do you see any of that?
So accountability is important, and I do believe that there, by the way, is broad bipartisan support for supporting Ukraine there in this war against Russia, and I believe that bipartisan support will continue. Now, the Republicans can posture and such, but I think at the end of the day, they're going to be there. Now, accountability is always important, and those tough questions have been asked. I sit as a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee, and those questions have been coming up repeatedly again to the administration. Where are we in terms of accountability? And the accountability questions are being addressed, and I believe that there is accountability of where these weapons are going, and making sure that they're getting into the right hands, the right places, and that obviously we'd never want to see any of these weapons fall into the wrong hands. So the accountability to the greatest extent that we can is being guaranteed.
All right, so before we leave this topic, you're satisfied with giving them the Patriot missiles. You're satisfied with giving them, well, $2 billion just this week, another $45 billion, and you're satisfied that the money is going where it's supposed to be going.
It is a lot of money, no doubt about it. And but it is, as President Zelensky said, this is an investment in this democracy and global security. We cannot allow Vladimir Putin to start the largest land war in Europe since World War II and making a land grab by force. Those days have to be over. And if we don't push back, you don't know what Vladimir Putin is going to do next. Where would he go next when he conquered Ukraine? There's a clear goal that he has in mind, that he wants to reconstitute the borders of the old Soviet Union. And if that's the case, and he wants to restore Russia and the USSR to its grandeur days, then that means he's going to go beyond Ukraine, and that's a wider war, and that could very well involve the United States. If we can stop Vladimir Putin here, then we can prevent that wider war from ever happening.
Okay, let's stay in Washington. Let's stay in that building. By the time this program airs, the January 6th report will have come out. Now, this is separate from the criminal charges that the committee recommended be filed against President Trump. By the way, Sheldon Whitehouse kind of downplayed that. He said, well, it is a political committee, and a U.S. attorney in the Justice Department may not act on what is a political committee. Do you believe that this committee was lopsided? Were they in search of an outcome that was predetermined to charge a former president criminally?
So criminal
recommend the charges.
Yeah, the charges that the commission is recommending to the Justice Department are just that. They are recommendations. They don't have the force of law. At the end of the day, this is going to be up to career prosecutors within the Department of Justice or the special counsel that's been appointed to make a determination as to whether or not laws have been violated. Look, what the January 6th Commission did is incredibly important for accountability purposes, for letting history show the record of who is responsible. Clearly, the evidence was presented. It clearly shows that Donald Trump was the person that is responsible for assembling that crowd. He ignited that flame, that fuse that then set January 6th in motion. That was an insurrection. That was an attempt to interfere with the lawful, peaceful transfer of power by counting the electoral votes receiving those electoral votes in Congress. Donald Trump bears that accountability, and he should be held accountable, and anybody else that was involved in that coup attempt on January 6th.
You would agree that this was Nancy Pelosi's committee. She wouldn't allow certain Republicans to be seated. She went with a couple of really Trump-hating Republicans, including Liz Cheney. The outcome was almost predetermined. They made a compelling case. I watched it, and I've seen those videos, and nobody likes seeing what went down that day. But the notion that this committee was a bunch of Democrats who were out to get Donald Trump, it seems to be bearing fruit.
Well, look, the facts speak for themselves, and it was a bipartisan committee. You did have Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney.
Let me push back on that. It wasn't who the leadership wanted. The Republicans wanted Jim Jordan and others who would have been able to cross-examine, present a different set of facts, and give it more of a fair and balanced approach. It was Nancy's committee.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen a more fair and balanced, if you call that, a more Republican
You just made
involvement.
news there.
No, but I want to say this. The people that they were appointing were not fair and balanced. They were not objective.
Well, it would have made the proceedings more fair and balanced.
No, Jim Jordan, unfortunately, and these are my colleagues, and even though we have differences of opinion, I still respect them as colleagues, but I don't respect the fact that they ignore facts and ignore what happened on January 6th, and are clearly willing to dismiss what happened, the facts on January 6th. And they weren't. Jim Jordan was not going to be an objective Republican on that committee.
Oh, and Liz Cheney was going to be an objective Republican?
Yeah, I think
give a little bit.
She's telling the truth. Is the fact of the matter.
I understand, but it is kind of a semi-legal proceeding that Republicans weren't allowed to have the ones they wanted. So you wish it would have been a little more balanced? What are you saying?
I would have said if we had more more Republican involvement, I would have been fine with that. Okay. But I am fine with the people that Nancy Pelosi did appoint. I think Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger were fair and objective and encouraging and allowing the facts to come out. The facts was what drove this, and giving the Republicans the opportunity to have people on there that were going to be obstructionist,
Yeah.
and we're not interested in hearing the truth, that would have been a non-starter. So, Nancy had a tough choice to make. I support what she decided.
Let me make sure I'm accurate with when I'm quoting Sheldon Whitehouse. He said, if you have the evidence, present it. And if you have compelling evidence, perhaps the Justice Department would act. However, the procedure, what he sees, he didn't underscore and say exclamation point. It is a political committee, and the Justice Department and U.S. attorneys generally don't act on that. He also told me earlier in another appearance on this very program that it was a very dangerous, slippery slope to go down for one party to go after the former president of the opposition party. He said that was a dangerous, slippery slope. You agree with that? Because we're in uncharted territory.
We
here.
are definitely in uncharted territory, and I think that that's where we have to rely on facts, and you rely on career prosecutors to ultimately make that decision. The recommendations for Congress are showing have weight, and the evidence that was assembled has weight, and prosecutors should consider that. But since Sheldon's a former prosecutor, I defer to him on his analysis and don't disagree with what he's saying. And I think that any next steps in terms of prosecution need to be very carefully considered, because Donald Trump is now a candidate for president. But I certainly hope that because of his actions on January 6th, I hope it disqualifies him for ever holding office again. And it's my hope that he never becomes president of the United States or any elected office ever again.
Yeah, Sheldon Whitehouse, I want to be clear. He was doubtful that the U.S. Attorney to the Justice Department would pick this up, but he also said if you have the evidence to make a compelling case, let the evidence speak. Congressman, well, that leaves us with what's next then? Are you done with politics?
I'm not sure what the next steps will be, and as I said, I want to do something that certainly will be in service to the people of Rhode Island somehow, but there's could be many different forms, even in a volunteer capacity.
That's Congressman Langevin. That was I was with you in January when you gave us the news that you weren't going to run again, and you made headlines. We're going to get to what's next for you coming up a little later in the broadcast. In the meantime, we're kind of continuing our conversation about what's now for you. You're still in office. There's still news to be dealt with, issues to be dealt with, including Donald Trump and his tax returns. When you ran for office in your campaigns, you never released your tax returns. You felt that you had certain privacy issues regarding the settlement with your accident. You didn't want to release them. Was it fair for Congress to vote to release former President Trump's tax returns? We know that presidents are subject to audits. We know that never happened with the IRS. But as far as releasing his tax returns against his will, is that a slippery slope, Congressman? I don't think you would have liked if anybody did that to you.
Well, first of all, there's a big difference between a member of Congress and the President of the United States in terms of the power that they have to enrich themselves or make decisions that are going to channel funds to their friends or their business or first of all, a big difference between a member of Congress and a President of the United States.
But aren't
I think that the Ways and Means Committee weighed everything in terms of what's in the public's best interest, and they voted to release Donald Trump's tax returns, and now there'd be greater scrutiny as to know where the income came from, and also any other issues in terms of how much Donald Trump actually paid in taxes and such. So.
Well, you're right. There's a big difference between a congressman and a senator and the President of the United States. We understand that. But some of the same principles apply. You were criticized for some of the stock trades you made in Congress. You made some money. So it's kind of the same principles.
Not this year. I can tell you.
Well, everybody has a bad
market.
year.
Yeah, the size is terrible in the stock market.
But you see what I'm getting at. You made money. Some
Yeah, so that's
criticized
why-
you.
but
Some criticized you,
that's
and you
why-
didn't want to release your returns.
Yeah.
But hey, they released his.
But all the financial information I have is transparent, and we are required to list all of our assets and put that out there. Donald Trump really didn't even do that. And so that's why, again, having that information, I think, is important. It's a very different situation from a member of Congress or an executive of the President of the United States, where that needs to be a greater level of transparency.
Should politicians like yourself and like the president be forced to release their tax returns? Should we make that a matter of law?
Well, maybe that's something that will happen at some point.
Why didn't you
so
want to
the
release
data-
yours? Why, did I
But
recap it correctly?
My medical expenses. I
Okay.
think that's private information. That it's. I'm not on a level playing field with other people that are in elective office
Right.
that don't have the kind of medical expenses and privacy expenses issues that I have. So that's one of the reasons why I did it. But everything that I thought was required by law to disclose, I did that accurately and faithfully, and complied with the law.
You took a little heat for some stock trades you made, and you said you lost money this year. We all have.
Yeah.
I looked at my 401k.
Yeah.
It's down. You want to address that? Do you think Congress needs to tighten the laws regarding people who are serving, trading stock?
Yeah.
You, by the way, you said, listen, it was above board. I did nothing wrong. I made some money.
Okay. So everything that I did was allowed by under the law. That I've only traded on publicly available information, and I disclosed any stock trades I made and did investing in consultation with my financial advisor. But clearly, there's a shift that has taken place in the eyes of the public that they don't want members of Congress trading stocks, and so there is legislation that would prevent that from happening going forward. I've said on the record that I would support that if it came to a vote, because it's what my constituents want. I'm not there representing myself. I'm there representing the people of the state of Rhode Island, as I've always have been. And if that, I said that if that bill came to the floor, that I would vote for it. But going forward, I think it's probably best. I guess if I was going to give advice to other my colleagues, that invest in index funds and don't do individual stocks, only because the concern that people have. There's always going to be the naysayers that think that you're getting some kind of an advantage. Even if though you're not, you can do everything above the board. It's the perception issue, and so to not deal with that, just invest either in index funds or CDs or things like that.
Well, do you think it was a mistake to keep going? You had faced criticism for a couple of years, and you had some pretty good trades.
Yeah.
I don't want to. You have knowledge of cyber issues. Apart from what you know that I don't know, you also have a general knowledge. This was your area.
Publicly available information is what that I definitely tried to always avoid things like investing in defense stocks or since it on the Armed Services Committee or in cyber stocks, and I've avoided those on balance. So,
do you think it was unfair criticism?
The public has a strange way of deciding, what they think is fair criticism or not, and I respect people's views on that.
Let's talk a little bit more about maybe what you perceive as unfair criticism. You had a bunch of opponents through the years, and they would always say, "Oh, he hasn't passed many bills." You would say what?
So I'm very proud of the record of accomplishment, and in Congress, the way it works is you introduce a bill, and then generally it gets turned into an amendment, and it gets attached to a broader bill. That's just the fact. That's the way Congress works. It's not like the General Assembly where, and when I was in the General Assembly, I introduced a bill, and you see it go through the process, and that individual bill will become law. It just doesn't really work that way in Congress. So just by way of example, one of the things I'm most proud of is my work in the national security arena, and especially in the area of cybersecurity. And I introduced a bill 10 years ago that I've been working on to create a national cyber director. So after many years, and after the Cyberspace Solarium Commission made it one of their big recommendations, I was able to finally turn that bill into an amendment that got added and passed in the National Defense Authorization Act. And a couple of years ago, we created the National Cyber Director in the Executive Office of the President. I created a whole department that is focused on cyber now. I'm very proud of Chris Inglis as our first inaugural National Cyber Director. He's done important work, and it's done exactly what I hope it would do, is to that role serve as the principal advisor to the President and on cyber issues and coordinating cyber policy. But that's just one example of how you turned an amendment into a bill into an amendment into a law. So
I think you said in the last debate, it's not the sponsor that counts as much as the vote I took.
Right.
on
Right.
hundreds and thousands of pieces of legislation.
Right. I don't need to get credit for every bill that I've introduced that becomes law. It's about getting the job done, and you do that through the amendment process, and I was proud to be able to do that. You know, on disabilities legislation, for example, I passed the...
Would you hold on?
Sure.
I just got to take a quick break, but I
You
want to
bet.
delve into that and talk a little bit more about cybersecurity, because the truth was you were ahead of the curve on that.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Congressman Langevin.
Jim has done a superb job as a member of Congress. He has been extraordinarily dedicated to the 2nd District and to the whole state, really, working hard for seniors, working hard for everyone. And he's made a significant contribution both in terms of his own personal example and other ways for the disabled community nationally. He has really set a standard for performance and dedication and skill and effort. In terms of his work in the Congress, he's been a great partner, and also he has really taken a lead rather in cybersecurity. Years ago, when this was a novel topic, he understood the implications and the ramifications, and he has worked very closely to make significant changes in national policy which will benefit us for years to come. So it's a significant loss, both personally and institutionally, but Seth Magaziner has the same energy, talent, and enthusiasm that Jim brought to the job, and I expect very rapidly he will be making his contribution, and a significant one too.
This is your life. You're going to have your kindergarten teacher's going to walk in here any second. Jack Reed, very complimentary, but also leading us into this larger discussion about cybersecurity. You are ahead of the curve. You talked about this 10, 15 years ago, and I don't know, maybe when we heard you talking about it, we were saying, what's he talking about? There's other issues. Why did you pick that as your keystone issue? Because that's what you will be remembered for. And we'll talk a little bit about the accessibility issues, but this is it, cybersecurity. What made you go for that years ago?
Sure. First of all, I want to thank Jack Reed for his comments just a few minutes ago, along with Sheldon and David, the great colleagues that I've worked with over these last 22 years. It's really been an honor and a privilege to be part of this congressional delegation. On the issue of cyber, I was, the way I kind of fell into this role is that I was chairing a subcommittee on the Homeland Security Committee, and we had a briefing one day from my staff director said, you've got to get a classified briefing on the Aurora threat. And it was these two scientists from Idaho National Labs that found a way through to remotely tap into a generator's logic controller through a SCADA attack and cause it to blow itself up. And then the broader question is, well, if you can do it in a generator which is about the size of like a container truck, if you will, the container that you'd see on a ship, for example, that you very well could do that at scale, and then you're potentially affecting the whole sector of the country's electric grid. And we were not prepared for that, clearly, as we were doing a deeper dive in this. So it became clear that cyber was going to become a growing threat, both economically and from a security standpoint. I've said it often, it's the national security and economic security challenge of the 21st century, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. We've made progress to better protect ourselves, but it's still a long way to go.
You know, technology moves so quickly. So a scant 10, 12 years ago when you were talking about this, did you feel like the lone voice in the wilderness? And people said, what are you talking about? We got wars, we got recession, we got a lot of things to deal with here, and you're talking about cybersecurity. Do you feel vindicated now?
Yeah.
As you go down the hall, do you say, I told you so, look at me?
Well, I used to get a lot of funny looks, and people didn't understand the urgency of what I was seeing, but it really did concern me that, we could have a whole part of the country that get hit with a major cyber attack and the resultant loss of life or certainly economic damage, and you couldn't reconstitute, you couldn't fix that very easily, very quickly, or the banking system or telecommunication system, and a number of threats that could affect our economy or our security. So, I clearly everybody understands how important it is now, but when I was doing this, 15 years ago, it was a new issue for people to get their arms around.
Let's get into disability rights and things like that. You're also a champion of that. But I remember when you were Secretary of State here in Rhode Island, and you had an office in the Capitol, and I was in there once, and you were showing me this technology. You speak to the computer, and it says your words, or it types out your words. It was terrible.
Yeah, it was.
Back then,
It was
it
not
wasn't
great.
working.
It was a challenge in the early drag and dictate program. I remember that it was a challenge to get it to work right. Now the voice
amazing now.
dictation it's come a long way.
But technology has been important to you because of your situation. You had
Yeah.
the accident, and it left you paralyzed, and you depend on technology perhaps more than we do.
Yeah.
This wheelchair you have is amazing. It goes up and down. It can climb stairs.
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
the one that can do that?
It can do that. Yeah, that's a little complicated. I don't do that very often.
All right,
but I do use it to go up curbs or rough terrain. It's a great technology.
And you had the voice recognition software. Well, that was more than 20 years ago. So
Yeah,
I don't want to date you, but when
it was back when I was Secretary of State. It was when I first started using the drag and dictate program, and then it evolved into what it is now on iPhones.
So there's this reliance on technology. You also have life support systems that you have to have in your home and things like that. Do you have a different perspective on technology than maybe I do, and maybe this is what got you interested in protecting it?
I think I've always been kind of a techie, but certainly I have come to appreciate the benefits that technology offers, and it gives me more independence and being able to be more fully take advantage of what society has to offer in terms of being out there. And so just being able to use this chair and going on the beach, for example, on on the sand and so I'm or rough terrain, it allows me to live a more full and independent life. But you can control, for example, from your phone, turning on the lights on and off in your home.
Yeah.
There's a whole number of things, the heating system, making it hotter or cooler.
You do all that?
Oh yeah. So I have and turning on the alarm in my house on and off. You can do this all from your phone now. So technology has been important. The one thing that I saw when I became Secretary of State, the internet was just bursting on the scene.
Yeah.
It's surprising to even talk that. It makes me feel
I
old now. But 1994 when I became Secretary of State, I was just learning what an email address was, right? And now, everybody knows, everybody has an email address or multiple email addresses. But we use the internet to put information at people's fingertips. And so we started putting bills online and legislative votes online and meeting notices online. So made it easier for people to access and connect with government. I thought information is power, and that should belong to the people. The other thing is new voting machines.
I'll get to that because
Okay.
that goes back to your time as Secretary of
Sure.
State. You introduced it, but I want to talk a little more about disability rights and what it's been like for you, and how that may have played into your decision not to seek re-election.
Well, Jim, you were here in Congress before I got here. You actually helped me get here. And in the time that I've been here, you've been a wonderful companion and ally. And now we're going to lose you in Congress, but our loss will be Rhode Island's gain as you come home.
Am I missing something with the sweater vest look and the tie and the blazer?
What's that?
You have it, and he had it there too. Is this something in Congress?
I don't know. We know style. What can I say? Sheldon's a shop dresser. So.
All right. Let's talk about your advocacy for disability rights for obvious reasons. They really accommodated you when you came to Congress. You had a hideaway office in the main building that not many people get that, and they accommodated you coming and going. Tell me about that.
Well, first of all, again, it's been a privilege to serve over these last 22 years. And when I first arrived in Congress, they weren't quite ready for me yet. Some with a significant disability, but Steny Hoyer, our majority leader now, one of the original authors of the Americans with Disabilities Act, was amazing and making sure that my service in Congress was possible and seamless, and he did everything he could to accommodate me. So they did give me, instead most members get 3 rooms, they gave me an extra room as a personal care room if I could just stretch out. I needed to rest my back and things like that. After just, long days and long nights, sometimes you're there until wee hours of the morning. So that was very helpful. He made sure I got a first floor office so I didn't have to go into the lottery that most members go into. So for safety reasons and efficiency reasons, being on the first floor of a building, made a lot of sense. But there were other things that needed to happen, making the rostrum on the floor, the lecterns.
It went up and down
accessible.
for you.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
and they were mounted to so they could be mounted
Right.
to the floor. They weren't originally. I couldn't even get close enough to my feet would get in the way. My feet would hit the lectern, and I couldn't put my speech close enough to even read it. So I had to speak from the side of the lectern. Till the house woodworkers built these beautiful lecterns that are now mounted on the floor that everybody uses. They put more voting stations in on the house floor so I could get to them, because most of them are behind the seats on the floor. So they put in a couple that were much more accessible and convenient. And then the big thing was Speaker Pelosi on the 20th anniversary made sure that the Speaker's rostrum was accessible. They put a series of 2 lifts in the Speaker's rostrum that allowed me to get up to the top level. And it was such an honor on the 20th anniversary to be able to preside over the United States Congress. And it was a thrill, but it was also, it was breaking a glass ceiling. It wasn't really about me.
Right.
It was about saying the message to all people with disabilities or with challenges that anything is possible, that you too can serve as Speaker of the House of the United States Congress.
We have this segment and then another one. I just want to get to so many topics before we leave, but there's unfinished work with regard to disability rights. Just a couple of months ago, you were denied passage on an airplane because the foreign carrier wasn't aware of how your wheelchair really is safe to carry. They were concerned about the batteries, and you couldn't get to Europe, and you were mad about that. And I know you took action on that. What else do you want to take action or see action on in that realm? What has not been done yet?
Yeah. So I'll say this: that that was a big deal, not being able to get on the island because of the lithium-ion batteries in my chair. Even though my chair is FAA safety approved, and so the carrier wasn't up to speed on the regulations and the safety systems.
You missed your flight.
Yeah. So, but I want to see legislation passed that standardizes that for all people as lithium-ion batteries become more popular and pervasive in use in chairs and mobility devices. But all lithium-ion batteries are not created equal, and some are more safe than others. These are very safe that are in my chair. So, but beyond that, I want to see passengers with disabilities be able to travel easily without discrimination or without problems of the chairs getting damaged. That's a frequent problem that all people with disabilities, if you're having a wheelchair, that you every time my chair comes off the plane, I'm holding my breath, crossing fingers that that it wasn't damaged, and I've had it damaged, a number of times, unfortunately.
Okay.
So, but also a couple of years ago, I was very proud to have passed the air carrier with disabilities, air passenger with disabilities Bill of Rights, so that it outlined the rights that people with disabilities have when traveling and protections. But the Air Carrier Access Act would go a step further to make sure there's more accountability, and would allow people with disabilities to have a private right of action, have their day in court if their rights were violated. Right now, they don't have that ability, so I'd like to see that change.
A person who is not dealing with your challenges doesn't fully understand or have the perspective you do. And sometimes we may see, there's so many handicap parking spots. And just last night, Mayor Wu up in Boston signed legislation to make sure that the televisions in a bar or a restaurant always have closed captioning on. And someone who's not challenged may say, well, there's too many spots, so that should be up to the private business. What would you say to someone who is not experiencing this, may say it's a little too much? What would you say?
Well, I'd say, the life is full of challenges for anyone. For people with disabilities, they're magnified and they're probably more numerous. And so I think that there's a good balanced approach, to inclusion and allowing people to live free and independent lives. The Olmstead decision says that people with disabilities should be able to live free and independently in their communities wherever possible. And that's what the Americans with Disabilities Act it was designed to achieve. And by the way, I believe that I probably would not be able to serve effectively in Congress had that bill not been signed into law. So I'm grateful for those who champion the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it has made a difference in my life, and I know countless others. And when we passed the ADA Amendments Act, I was there in Congress to help that bill become law, because there were several court decisions over the years that had weakened the original intent of the ADA, and now the ADA Amendments Act helped to strengthen that. But there's still more work to be done in terms of things like accessible transportation
Yeah.
options. That is a real problem for people with disabilities. You know, for example, I can't just get an Uber if I wanted to take a car going to a city, or especially if you live in a rural community.
Yeah.
Very hard to get access to accessible transportation options. So those are things that we still need to work on.
How much did your disability and the challenges you face every day just to get up in the morning, did that wear on you? Did that factor in the decision to say, I've had enough?
To some degree, in that this is an amazing job, and let me just say it's been the honor and a privilege of my lifetime to be able to serve the people of Rhode Island in the United States Congress as their voice and their vote in Congress. But it comes with great challenges. You always burn the candle at both ends, and your life is not your own. There's usually a very packed schedule, and you're going from morning until night. And then there's all the travel that's involved too. And after 22 years of living in two places at the same time, traveling back and forth, almost weekly, I decided that it was starting to kind of take its toll, and I wanted to do something that allowed me to stay closer to home, didn't involve getting on an airplane every week, and have a better work-life balance. But as I said before, I'm not going away. I'm just coming home, and it's been, again, such an honor for me to represent Rhode Island and Washington. I always really wanted to give good public service to the people of Rhode Island. For me, this journey began in public life as a way of giving back, to say thank you to the people in the community that rallied around me and my family at a time when I needed it the most, when I had my accident. And then after giving good public service, I wanted to be able to say thank you, and then be able to come home and be able to do other things, which is what I'd like to do now.
I once read a Parade magazine article on you many, many years ago. I think it talked about it takes you a long time to get ready, and it's a grind, and getting on an airplane.
Yeah,
and you did it for a long time.
Yeah, I did, and it was it was an honor to do it, not without its challenges, but I just rolled up my sleeves and went to work and just kind of made it happen. You just don't think about it, you just make it happen.
But this whole path was as a result of your accident. When you were a young man, you wanted to be a police officer.
Yeah.
The accident happened in the police station. Do you ever reflect upon that? This was not the chosen path.
No, I thought
if it never happened, you would have been
you
might have been the police chief somewhere.
Well, I wanted to go into law enforcement as a police officer. I thought maybe I'd go on to the FBI as an FBI agent someday, but life had other plans, and it didn't work out. I'm lucky to be alive. I had, very blessed that I made it through that the very serious accident, and with the help and support of my family and community, I was able to build a new life and went on to do other things. It hasn't always been easy. Again, life has been full of challenges for me, but I'm an optimist, and I do appreciate the opportunities I've had to make a difference and build a successful life.
You have a remarkable disposition, and I know you're a public person, and you've always been this even-keeled when it comes to talking about the accident. But what would you tell a young man who maybe is going through the same thing you went through? I mean, life has seasoned you. You see things a certain way now. Did you always see it that way? When it happened, do you think about the accident on a daily basis? Does it cross your mind?
Well, it crosses my mind in the fact of I've been very fortunate to have a wonderful family and community that's always been there for me, and that's helped me through some of the darkest times of my life. My faith in God has always been incredibly important to me, and that foundation is what helped me to build and go forward. And so, but it was, it certainly has been full of challenges, but that's what kept me going. And then finding a passion for something that you love to do. I think that's really the key to success in life in general. And so to some other young Jim Langevin out there that's just had an accident or is a setback, or we all have challenges in our lives and you're looking for, what's the next, that path, how do I get, past this, how do I move forward? Find something that you have a passion for it and go for it, just do it. And it doesn't mean that it's always going to work out easily, but you find a way to move forward and try to make your dreams come true, become reality.
We have about a minute left, so well, I wish we had more. I'll have you on the radio. We can continue the conversation. What's next? We understand you expressed interest in maybe taking over Rhode Island College, being the next president, academics. What is next? About 30 seconds left.
So, first of all, Jack Warner is at Rhode Island College right
Yes.
now as the interim. I've met with him several times now, and I think he's the right person for the job there. He's there for a year, I think 2, and I hope he stays even in longer than that.
So that's not for you.
So, but I love my alma mater. Rhode Island College is an important academic institution here in Rhode Island, and I will always be in service of my alma mater and support it. And I may be doing something there in the future, but in the near future, I'll be doing something in academia. I'll say that there'll be more that we'll talk about in January. But I'm going to be looking for a few different things that I'll put together that allow me to still earn a living, but also be able to make a difference in other ways. In any way, I'll always be in service to the people of Rhode Island. I love the state, the people who live here, and how could you not try to want to make a difference for people in other ways?